follow traffic, clear visual approach, runway 4 right, maintain 17, John Austin, 5 mile final. 17 till 5 hours.
The Games will soon be afoot. How will the Paris Olympics affect business aviation operations across Europe? From the National Business Aviation Association, this is Flight Plan, sponsored by Varion. I'm Rob Finfrock with your trusted source for the very latest business aviation news and information. The 2024 Summer Olympics will take place in Paris from July 26th through August 11th. Organizers expect as many as 15 million people to travel to France over the next 2 months. And if past games are any indication, the effects on business aviation travel will extend far beyond the City of Lights. I'm pleased to welcome today 3 experts on travel across Europe with some valuable insights on what business aviation operators can expect. We'll begin with Petra Dlublova, Operations Control Center Manager for Eurojet International, who says if you're traveling via business aircraft to the Games, Le Bourget Airport is probably your best option, but with an important caveat.
As the beginning of the Olympic Games is getting closer, the airports in Paris region are starting to be at their full capacity, including Le Bourget, and quick turnaround operations and repositioning is being coordinated now. So for the alternate airports, I would recommend Pontoise Airport or Melun as the best options. Both airports are close to Le Bourget within very good drive time from the Paris city center, not slot coordinated and with enough parking space. Also, as there are no customs, they are used only for Schengen flights. Another good option still within the drive time can be Vatry Airport or Albert Airport. But if the operator does not insist on staying in the country, my advice would be also to cross the channel and go to UK for parking. There are airports such as Farnborough, Biggin Hill or Stansted with a good parking space capacity. As for the crew, there are no special requirements to enter UK and the landing permit approval is not needed while flying ferry. On the other side, talking about Charles de Gaulle and Paris Orly, they are not good option for business aviation as they cannot be used by BizJets unless the passengers are connecting to from an airline or flight is directly connected with the Olympics. Both are also dedicated commercial airports and being used for head of states.
I have a feeling that's going to be a recurring theme in this discussion, Petra. If operators haven't already made their arrangements to travel in the region, they'd better get on it now.
Exactly. As we are really getting close. I mean, if somebody still did not send the request, they should do it right now and be ready that slots are very limited and the parking too. So they might not get their desired slots, but my advice is once you get the slot, keep it, do not change it, and look for some airport to reposition.
Business aviation operators also need to be ready for ripple effects across the continent. Kevin Honan is Senior Operations and Emergency Response Plans Advisor for Aviation Manuals.
Security will definitely be enhanced in the region. You're going to see a lot more presence of security personnel, possibly even additional resources like security dogs and additional screening requirements. And with so much traffic in that region, it's definitely going to cause a little bit longer turn time than normal. So you really need to make sure your crew and passengers are aware of that and just kind of set any expectations in advance that things might take a little bit longer or the security inspection requirements might be a little bit more onerous than would be standard when going into that region.
My third guest is Matthew Borey, co-founder and chief intelligence officer for Osprey Flight Solutions. Matt, what should passengers expect to see at European airports during the Olympics?
The security posture at most airports in France, especially those that are going to be supporting business aviation operators, are expected to have increased levels of security. What this will most likely involve is the deployment of additional personnel conducting roaming mounted patrols, either in vehicles or on other forms of transportation. And also, as Kevin noted, we expect to see the increased use of foot patrols. Some of these foot patrols will involve the use of sniffer dogs for anti-terrorism measures as part of the current environment in France in general. The reason why I highlight that is that France is currently at its highest level for its terrorism rating internally within the country. This was raised in recent months due to concerns stemming from the potential for terrorist attacks in the wake of armed conflict in the Middle East region. In addition, France is about to have elections as well, and security is expected to be increased for the election timeframe, in addition to the increased security stemming from the enhanced terrorism threat level in the country. So we really have three separate key drivers for why you can expect to see the additional patrols, both from a mounted and foot perspective. We also expect to see additional ramp checks of aircraft when they are on the ground. And for business aviation operators, this could mean not only in France, in Paris, or in airports within the country, but at airports where you're doing your repositioning. So if you're repositioning flights to the United Kingdom, there's already been reports of increased ramp checks in recent months. Osprey's view is that this is due to a concern around anti-terrorism measures, and we can expect to see this activity taking place going forward through the Olympic timeframe, whether your aircraft are in France or your aircraft are in other airports in the region when they've been repositioned.
More of our conversation in a moment following this word from our sponsor.
Take your aviation operations to new heights. Introducing Varion, formerly known as ATP, your ultimate partner in achieving maximum aircraft uptime. At Varion, we understand the challenges faced by everyone in aviation. Our industry-leading technology solutions revolutionize aircraft management, so there's no more waiting, no more wondering, and no more wasted effort. Get real-time visibility of your maintenance, inventory, operations, and regulatory data right at your fingertips with an easy-to-use system, backed by a team of experts with deep aviation knowledge offering 24/7, 365 support. After 50 years in the business, we have built a growing reputation for getting our customers more aircraft uptime. That's why thousands of aircraft operators worldwide have already discovered the power of Varion. Say goodbye to downtime and hello to increased efficiency and profitability. Visit Varion.com to learn more. Varion, let's get you more uptime.
We're back now with Petra Dlublova, Kevin Honan, and Matt Borey, and our discussion about what business aviation operators and passengers should expect when traveling across Europe during the Paris Olympics. Matt, are there any specific visa requirements or other special permits that flight crews and their passengers may need for traveling to the Olympics themselves?
As long as you're following the requirements for the Schengen region, your ability to fly in and out of the country with the standard visa protocols will be fine. What we have wanted to note, though, is that business aviation operators are going to have very specific requirements for accessing slots at airports, and this will include a general declaration being submitted during a specific time frame. It will also require that your flight plans be submitted and approved in advance. So the focus should be on ensuring the ability of your aircraft to operate safely with all permits and general declarations and flight plans in place, while also adhering to the passenger-related visa requirements of the Schengen region.
And that goes back to your earlier point, Petra, about the need to plan ahead.
Correct. I would maybe mention also the landing permit rights. So this should be also a very important part of the flight preparation. Because for flights part 135, if flying with passenger, the landing permit is needed. Furthermore, if a non-EU operator is performing the passenger flight between third country and France, the operator will also need a non-objection confirmation from the French airlines. And these airlines have then 48 hours to express any objection to the flight. And if they do not object, then the CAA will issue the permission. And also, the CAA currently requires general declaration too, with the full passenger details for the sanction check. And if they see any Russian name on the passenger list, they might raise some additional question or require passenger passport copies or additional proof of the citizenship. So this should be taken into the consideration as well.
I do just want to highlight what Petra noted. The EU just announced its 14th sanctions package against Russia this past week. It did include an enhancement on air travel. So previously, Russian entities or Russian individuals could not own any type of aircraft and operate it in EU airspace, which would include France. From a business aviation perspective, this has now been expanded, and it bars any Russian national from booking a charter flight or a business aviation type operation. And so the expectation is that any Russian national that is on a passenger manifest will receive a significant amount of scrutiny. You need to ensure that the checks being done on who is booking the use of any type of business aviation operation is thoroughly checked against existing sanctions regimes. This is a new development that literally only came about within the past week, and it comes with just a few weeks before the games. There's been plenty of information over the past 2+ years on the ownership related sanctions on Russian individuals related to business aviation. But this new development specifically to Russian entities or individuals booking business aviation flights in the European Union, including to and from France, this would apply, is less clear and needs to be evaluated for any type of operation that has this type of exposure prior to the Paris Games.
Great points, Matt. Kevin?
I do want to reiterate making sure you have all your operational authorizations in place, especially if you plan to cross the pond from the United States or another region into Europe. So things like your North Atlantic high-level airspace authorizations, any data link requirements, because I believe France does actually utilize the ATN B1 system. So making sure you have those letters of authorization in place appropriate to where you're going to be flying is going to be crucial. That's going to be something they'll probably check for during a ramp check. So just take the time, pull out your letters of authorization, make sure all the information is correct for the aircraft and the systems on it, and just kind of get all your ducks in a row before you fly over. And another point is also if you plan to utilize the category A, B, or C airports in Europe, so anything that would be like a special authorization or training required airfield, making sure all that's been met as well before you actually fly over there.
Kevin mentioned the word airspace. So during the ceremony from 26 July onward related to the Olympics into September, a no-fly zone will be enforced over several different areas of France, mainly including Paris. This is going to span 75,000 square kilometers. Almost all aircraft will be banned from entering these specific areas from 1730 to 2300 UTC each day. Now, the French Directorate General for Civil Aviation has stated that the temporary interdiction zone would ensure the special air security of the games. Operators need to be aware of the location of these zones so that they do not breach any prohibitions. There would likely be some form of scramble response from the French military. Obviously, air traffic control would contact you if you were near or in or approaching one of these zones. And I'm not talking about this necessarily from a kinetic engagement perspective, but more so that any type of breach like that could lead to a diversion needing to take place. And then also that there could be regulatory requirements that would need to be dealt with after the fact.
And Matt, that's actually a kind of a cool point that you brought up about the interception, making sure your crew members are aware of those interception procedures as well. Maybe do a quick brush up on that just in case something were to occur.
Yes, that makes sense, because if you're operating over France, even if you get directed by ATC towards one of these areas, or if you are contacted by ATC and told that you are approaching these areas, there's going to be some form of response. You may be made aware of it by the authorities. You may not even be aware that a scramble response has been initiated. But if one does take place, ensuring that your crew do not overreact, ensuring they understand the protocols for how to handle this situation appropriately will be prudent to ensure that it's conducted safely, securely, and that it minimizes the disruption to your operation during transit of French airspace.
Indeed, Matt. It's in the best interest of all business aviation operators to avoid any sort of kinetic engagement.
The reason why I highlighted as well, so we've already seen currently in in Germany at present during the Euro football championships that GPS interference is taking place around the stadiums. This has been announced by the German authorities, and it is a protective measure against drones. However, it is having a knock-on effect in the airspace around. This information is all covered in NOTAMs by the German authorities, and there's a similar expectation that in Paris during the Olympic Games, there will be non-kinetic measures to defend against drones. This will include electronic warfare that will cause some GPS interference. And so not only will we have these no-fly zones, which will be enforced in France, there will also be areas where non-kinetic defensive measures will be in place to defend against drones. This type of information will be handy for crew because having inaccurate GPS information while flying, while also flying near no-fly zones, is something that adds complexity in the cockpit. It's not something to be overly concerned about. The key is being aware that these areas exist and how to handle any type of disruption that comes from it.
Petra, with so many moving parts, as Kevin and Matt have mentioned, might we see these airspace closures extend beyond the scope of the games and into other regions?
At the moment, I don't think so. But as Matt and Kevin was already mentioned, we can definitely expect the traffic interruption during the opening ceremony. And there will be, for the safety reason, a no-fly zone around Parisian airspace. This closure will involve a shutdown at the traffic at the major Parisian airports. So no flights will be able to operate, including the head of states, and no slots will be available at Charles de Gaulle, Orly, Beauvais, and Le Bourget.
And once again, operators need to make their preparations now and file their flight plans sooner than later if they plan to travel in these areas during the Olympic Games.
Exactly, the advanced planning is the key. It's crucial. It's advisable to file a flight plan as early as possible. Also, in case of slot-coordinated airports, you cannot forget to add the slot ID numbers to the box 18 of the flight plan. And also, it's important to mention there the flight is related to the Olympics, because those flights will have a priority then.
What additional tips do you have, Petra, for business aviation operators who may be impacted by the Olympics?
From the operations side, maybe I would also point out the careful pre-planning of the catering and fuel too. Because from my experiences, catering is usually something that the operators are dealing with at the last stage of their flight preparation, and we are receiving many catering orders last minute. But talking about such big event as Olympic Games, the advanced planning on in-flight catering is a must. And also check with the provider the fuel availability, as some of the fuel suppliers already confirmed delays or at least 1 hour. So maybe the crew should anticipate these delays and plan to refuel upon arrival.
Great advice. Matt, what about you?
I've already highlighted that France will have increased security at place at airports. Kevin has also mentioned that there's going to just be increased security in general in the country and especially around venues. One thing that hasn't been noted, though, is the potential for activist activity and protest. There's a variety of groups with different intents surrounding activism that could manifest themselves in France during the Olympic timeframe. It's a very high-profile event, and many activist groups like to exploit high-profile events to get attention on the type of activity that they're trying to highlight. One potential target for activist groups which we all know has been business aviation. Most recently in the United Kingdom at Stansted Airport, just in recent weeks, there was a perimeter security breach where activists related to Just Stop Oil spray painted multiple business jets. I highlight this because in France, similar types of activist activity has been related to environmental and climate change protests. And there have been protests at airports in France, and there have been perimeter security breaches in France by activists who are supporting environmentalist or climate-related causes that has led to disruption to business aviation in the past. This is something to keep in mind when you're evaluating the airports that you're looking at using. The one thing about many of these activist groups is that they actually are announcing when and where they plan to protest. It is not a secret in many cases. Also, looking at past protest activity and where those have occurred can be an indicator where future activity may happen. So what I would advise is evaluate the airport that you're operating to from a safety and security perspective most definitely, but also take a look at the potential for social unrest, especially related to activism around environmentalist causes or climate change, and check whether or not there's a planned protest in and around the airport, and also check to see if past protests like that have had activity near that airport, and if any perimeter security breaches related to it have taken place. It's a good way to check all the boxes when you're evaluating what the different types of risks could be to a safe and secure business aviation operation.
Yeah, Matt's actually bringing up a really good point there about preparing for that sort of thing. You really need to make sure you have plans in advance if something were to happen, whether it be one of those eco-protests affecting your operations, civil unrest, or even something as severe as a terrorist incident. If you have an emergency response plan in place, you really need to take a look, make sure you have procedures set up for that. So anything from alternate travel plans if your aircraft were to become unavailable, or even an escape plan to get out of the region should something happen. And if you don't have an emergency response plan, it's a really great time to kind of sit down and discuss those things and get something in place, again, just to be prepared in advance. I mean, I'm certain nothing's going to be happening, but just in case something were to, that way you're kind of not left sitting. You can jump right into action and keep your passengers and crew members safe.
Indeed, Kevin. And if your travels over the next few months include Paris or other destinations across Europe, be sure to also check out NBAA's International Operations resource at nbaa.org/INTL. And that's the latest from the National Business Aviation Association. Remember, you can subscribe to all Flight Plan episodes wherever you find your favorite podcasts, or by asking your virtual assistant or connected device. You can also download Flight Plan directly from nbaa.org. I'm Rob Finfrock. Thanks for listening, and join us next time for a new episode of Flight Plan.
Flight base, sending out 3500.
We got him inside. We're still on 170.